Judging by rising housing prices alone, Puerto Rico's Act 60 tax incentives for individual investors and those exporting services from the island are becoming increasingly popular among U.S. persons looking to escape what they believe are going to be rising both income and capital gains taxes in the Biden administration. And today, I'm going to share with you 9 key facts that you may not have known about Puerto Rico's tax incentives. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. I'm the author of this best-selling book available on Amazon and the founder of Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best, whether that's Puerto Rico or anywhere else in the world, for tax reduction, protection from all the chaos in the world, and opportunities in new boom markets. More at nomadcapitalist.com. So let's talk about 9 tax facts that you may not have known about Puerto Rico's Act 60 program. This is where you can go and you can reduce your tax rates to either the single digits or even to 0. Now, there are some caveats to this, and we can cover that in a video. If you'd like to hear more about Act 60, leave a comment below and we will try and make more content about this. But the first thing that you want to know is that if you want to qualify, you cannot have lived in Puerto Rico for the last 10 years prior. Now, that's probably not going to apply to most people who are looking at moving to Puerto Rico. However, I do know some people who have lived there. They've worked in the hotel business, they've run other businesses, and so if you've been there before, you can't come back and qualify. So you can't have lived there for the last 10 years prior. Now, what you're also going to have to do is when you move, you're going to have to make an annual ongoing charitable contribution. This was recently increased, so now it's $10,000 a year. You're going to give $5,000 to a list of charities that comes from a government list, and $5,000 to any Puerto Rican charity of your choice. Now, it's interesting that one of the smaller factors in terms of establishing your connection to Puerto Rico is, where do you give money to charities? And so, depending on how much you give to charity, this can certainly be a step in the right direction. But do understand that you're going to have to make those charitable contributions to get your residence, to get your decree. The third thing that you're going to want to know is that when you move to Puerto Rico, you're going to have to buy a home within the first 2 years. Now, this in many ways I think is a good thing, and this is where, in my opinion, from a macro point of view, Puerto Rico has a number of similarities to someone from another country like in Australia or Germany simply exiting their country's tax system. What are you going to want to do when you're setting up your tax home somewhere else? You're going to want to have a home available to you, and you're not going to want to rent it out. You're not going to want to turn it into an Airbnb that you have strangers staying in when you're not there. You're going to want to have a home and have it be available to you. And if you own a home, even better. So after 2 years on the ground in Puerto Rico, you're going to need to buy a property. Now, the bad news about that is prices are going up, especially in some of the most desirable areas, as people are going down to Puerto Rico, especially with the boom in Bitcoin and crypto markets. You're seeing a lot of crypto folks going down there, some just because they want to cash out and keep a lot of their profits, benefit from a very low or zero tax regime. Others because it's a stepping stone to future expatriation, and they can basically lock in the numbers for their crypto now. They can start the clock ticking on their business in Puerto Rico, and they can save on capital gains tax, which may go up in the U.S. in the future, and they can basically start taking advantage of the benefits as their asset values go up. So that means that people are buying properties, and it means that prices of properties are going up. And so you want to make sure, where am I going to live? If I'm starting out by renting, where am I going to live in 2 years? What can I afford? Some people that we have going to Puerto Rico are just buying to begin with because they believe prices will continue to go up and they just don't want to mess around. That's certainly an option you can take as well, but within 2 years, you do need to buy a property. And that is the next thing that you should know. Prices are going up. In some cases, I've even seen property prices doubling, so do be aware of this. If you're looking for, an ultra cheap lifestyle, there may be better options. Again, your options are somewhat limited, especially if you're earning your money from capital gains. But do understand, number 4, prices in Puerto Rico are going up. Now, the 5th tax fact is that you actually do need to live in Puerto Rico, and there are multiple tests which you will need to pass. So again, this is where some similarities with other global tax systems come into play in Puerto Rico, where it's not just a matter of how long you spend in Puerto Rico. Your days count is important. However, if all of your other days are spent in the U.S., that may be an issue. And so you want to make sure you're actually living in Puerto Rico. One of the things I heard more about in past years, back in the mid-2010s, was people would say, why don't you just move to Puerto Rico and take a cigarette boat to the BVI or back to Miami, whatever. Who's gonna know? Now, I think that as you have wealthier people going down there, as you have a whole broad swath of people moving to Puerto Rico. You're seeing less of that. That's being diluted. But really, that never worked. You do need to be there. You need to put in your time. There's numerous different days tests that you can choose from, in terms of how you want to structure your time in Puerto Rico. But it has to be something where you're actually going down there. There are a whole number of conditions that you at least want to check the box on many of them to say, this is where I'm living in Puerto Rico. So another tax fact is that you can't simply arrive in Puerto Rico and then sell all your stuff the next day tax-free. Whether you have crypto, whether you have stocks, whether you've got a business, you're going to basically determine, when did I arrive in Puerto Rico? And then you're going to basically start the clock from there. And so what some people think is, hey, I'm just going to, get off the plane and sign the contract to sell my business, and I'm going to keep all that money. In some cases, it's time-based. In some cases, it is just the dollar value of when you arrive. But do understand you're going to have to put some commitment into living there. And occasionally people do call us and they say, can I just basically move there on January 1st and then on January 15th I just cash out of everything? I guess you could, but you're really not going to save much money. Another fact is that if you have certain assets, you're going to want to sell them while you are in Puerto Rico. And so what some people are saying is, hey, maybe I'll move to Puerto Rico for a while and then I'll get my second passport and then I'll look at expatriating from the US, and I'll just kind of use it as what I've been calling a soft landing. I still keep the access to the US, but I'll be weaning myself off of it. And for some reason, in some regards, Puerto Rico kind of seems like it is the US, and it feels like it's more comfortable than moving somewhere else. On the other hand, sometimes it feels like, but it's still substantially different. And if I can live there, then I can live overseas. So if you're going to expatriate, for example, you are going to want to sell your stuff while you're still in Puerto Rico. You don't just expatriate and then say, oh, but I was covered by Puerto Rico. You need to be more active in terms of actually selling your stuff. This isn't tax advice. Moving to Puerto Rico, as with any offshore tax procedure, is complicated and it's very specific to you. So make sure you get advice, whether it's from our team on our network or anyone else. Tax fact number 8 is that the United States is still going to tax you on all of your worldwide income. If you're living in Puerto Rico under Act 60, you're going to be a U.S. person, whether it's a citizen or, I suppose, green card holder. You're going to be liable for that U.S. taxation. And so nothing changes about the U.S. system. You still have the U.S. passport. And so what does that mean? It means your foreign bank accounts are still reportable. It means if you have foreign corporations, those are still reportable, foreign trusts. Everything that's reportable is still reportable, and you're still taxable on worldwide income. So if you have a global income generating real estate portfolio or other offshore assets, that's not always entirely going to be solved by Puerto Rico. Obviously, tax fact number 9 is that foreign countries may still tax you on income on their shores. And so it's not like Puerto Rico is just your shield that you're going to hold up and say, hey, Puerto Rico, nobody can touch me. But going back to the issue of the U.S. taxing you on your worldwide income, I think the best thing to have there is either a cloud-based business. So if you're running an online business, consulting, SaaS company, software, we've seen all different types of businesses where you can basically export services, as they say, from Puerto Rico to overseas, or some kind of cloud-based investment. So you are, again, in crypto, or you have some kind of long-term capital gains, for example. Those can be great things to do in Puerto Rico. If you do have a global real estate portfolio, you may have some benefits, but you want to understand that the U.S. is still going to tax you on that worldwide income. You're basically going to Puerto Rico and saying, hey, if I'm running a business, I'm exporting the services from Puerto Rico. If you're an investor, hey, I'm an individual investor in Puerto Rico. And so you have to play within the rules of that. This is not totally a shield to just do whatever you want. What it is saying everything that is attributed to Puerto Rico, you're getting these special rates. You're getting it for a certain period of time. It's not going to last forever. It is a good way for people who want to continue to have access to the U.S., who want to be close to the U.S., who want to be in the U.S. time zone, and who want to be surrounded by an increasing number of mainland Americans to go down there and be with other Americans, i.e. Puerto Ricans, in a place that still has that U.S. feel, and you don't have to take your passport, and it just feels a little bit closer. So there are definitely pros and cons to Puerto Rico, but you have to understand what you're getting into before you make the jump. So people ask, Andrew, how do I get the most out of Nomad Capitalist? How do I begin my Nomad Capitalist journey? The first thing people do is they start right where you're at. They watch YouTube, they listen to podcasts, they read articles at nomadcapitalist.com. We've spent years creating thousands of pieces of free content so that you can get the vibe from someone who's actually done this, from someone who's actually been in your shoes. What they'll do next, they'll get a copy of the book. You can find it on Amazon. It costs a few bucks, and while it's not going to give you all the secrets, it's going to, again, give you more of the vibe. You're going to learn a lot of the things that I've learned. You're going to learn some strategies you can employ, and you're going to get a lot further in your journey. From there, if you are the 7 or 8 figure entrepreneur investor, you can go to nomadcapitalist.com. You can click Become a Client. We're pretty busy these days, but we have availability to help a limited number of people who want to create a holistic plan, something that I think is so important. So if you want to do that, go to nomadcapitalist.com, click Become a Client, learn more about how it works and how we can help you.